Tom Harris.
Mr Brady, can I welcome you to the chair? I did a double take when I saw you sitting there. You looked very different at the very start of the debate. Can I begin by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Aberdeen North, and also my honourable friend, the member for South Down, for securing this debate, and can I add my voice to those who are complaining that this is not happening on the floor of the Commons, although it has to be said the quality of the debate today has been no less than it has been in years gone by. So can I thank all members, both sides of the House, who have spoken very eloquently, very well informed on behalf of the fishing communities they represent. Can I also echo the words of a number of members and take this opportunity to recall and pay tribute to the bravery of our fishermen and those who have lost their lives in an incredibly difficult and dangerous line of work. The men and women who work out at sea and in our ports take huge risks, and too many of them and their families pay the ultimate price. There is a clear cross-party consensus that radical reform of the Common Fisheries Policy is needed. And can I take this opportunity to commend the work of the Minister, the Honourable Member for Newbury, for his attempts this year and before then to take forward a set of proposals that will greatly advantage the industry and our marine environment. He is, on this issue, I'm reluctant to admit, doing a difficult job well. And he has the support of this side of the House in his continued efforts to secure real reform. In government, Labour ministers fought for fisheries reform in Europe, and we were committed to a radical reform programme in our last manifesto, and for the absence of doubt, that's the one that was so enthusiastically endorsed by the electorate. A collaborative approach to fisheries management, Mr Brady, will be particularly important in ongoing efforts to eliminate discards. Discarding is a symptom of poor management and practice of the current Common Fisheries Policy. It's wasteful, it undermines the sustainability of fish stocks, it distorts scientific evidence, and it deeply affects and frustrates our own fishermen. Throwing good fish back into the sea is simply squandering a valuable natural resource and is nothing short of immoral. In some fisheries, up to 60% of catches are discarded, and clearly this cannot be allowed to continue. Catch quota trials were introduced in 2011 to reduce discards of North Sea cod. Cod in the North Sea is recovering, but not as fast as prescribed in the EU Cod Management Plan, and because of this, a 20% cut in total allowable catch is likely to be implemented under provisions contained within the management plan. This side of the House, Mr Brady, believes that such a cut would be counterproductive. Any reduction in total allowable catch for one species such as cod in a mixed fishery such as the North Sea would have the likely effect of increasing discards. But any support for the status quo must be matched by increased commitments to selective fishing practices so that the mortality of cod continues to decrease to meet the plan's target. A lot has been said about CFP reform. I want to just move it on quickly because I know time is short, Mr Brady, to discuss a couple of related issues, not directly about CFP. The continued overfishing of north-eastern Atlantic mackerel is another issue that has to be resolved. And can I pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Banff-and-Buchan for her comments that she made on this issue. This side of the House calls on both the UK and the Scottish Governments to continue to defend the fishing rights of the UK fleets. Labour supports the EU's plans to ban imports of mackerel and other fish from Iceland and from the Faroe Islands. The Western mackerel fishery has traditionally been one of the most sustainable and well-managed fisheries in Europe, and the refusal of these island nations to take part in any sensible negotiations cannot be tolerated. Sanctions, unfortunately, cannot be ruled out, and I don't want to disappoint my honourable friend, the member for Great Grimsby, no longer in his seat. I can assure him, of course, that he will always be assured a warm welcome in Scotland, despite his comments earlier on today. But although sanctions cannot be ruled out, we have to rely on them as a last resort that may not be able to be avoided. We also want to see a rebalancing of the UK's fishing quota system, and this has been referred to by a number of members, particularly the Honourable Member for Waveney. We believe a radical overhaul of the way fishing quotas are allocated within the UK is needed. I'll give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
In the talk of sanctions on Iceland and Faroe, if any assessment has been made of the price of fish in the shop to the householder if fish was prevented coming onto the market from Iceland and Faroe in the UK?
I think that's a perfectly valid concern to be expressed, and of course I'm sure that the government and the fisheries producer organisations have made those calculations, and I don't have access to that information, but of course that is something that has to be considered if we are to go down that particular road, and I'm sure we all hope that that particular solution, if it is a solution, can be avoided. Smaller inland fishing vessels, Mr Brady, make up 3/4 of the UK's fishing fleet and employ nearly 2/3 of all full-time workers. But they're restricted from catching more than 4% of the UK fishing quota. Yes, of course.
Cheryl Murray.
Does the honourable gentleman accept then that it was his party's introduction of fixed quota allocations and their inaction to address the problem that has created this difficult problem that the Minister now is trying to address?
Tom Harris.
The Honourable Lady has made a number of interventions in this debate today, and her contributions are welcome. Can I just suggest that she has perhaps misjudged the nature of these debates, because they are generally not used to score party political points, and I'm not going to follow her down that particular road. Labour are committed to reforms that will tackle vested interests and reward those who fish more sustainably and selectively, with less impact on the environment. I have already commended the fishing industry as a whole on advancements that are being made. However, it is unacceptable that fleets representing the smaller, sustainable end of the industry should have to survive on just 4% of the UK fishing quota. This view was supported, I'm glad to say, in the 6th report of the EFRA Select Committee, which recommended a one-off reallocation alongside moves to reallocate quota in year. To his credit, Mr Brady, the Minister has attempted to reallocate, albeit a very small amount, of constantly underutilised quota to the under-10s. It is regrettable that the producer organisations have decided to take this decision to judicial review. If the Government's decision is overturned, will the Minister agree that this would mean that a vital national resource has been redefined as no more than a commodity, effectively privatising the seas and the fish stocks that reside there? And will he consider primary legislation to reverse that judgment if it comes? And thirdly, I accept that given the ongoing legal case, he may not want to comment explicitly on those, but it's useful to alert him that these are the issues that will demand answers in the near future. There is a real and genuine fear that, as in other countries where a rights-based system has been introduced, quota will end up in fewer and fewer hands. Our fisheries are a national resource, not a private one. It's the Government's job to ensure they remain that way. In my previous job as the Railways Minister, I think there is an analogy to be made with rail franchises. Rail franchises are given to private companies for a period of time, at the end of which an open competition is held, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so much, to allow those franchises to be exploited by different private companies. But during the whole of those franchises, that resource, that passenger income, is the property of the Government. With this in mind, can I press the Minister on when the Government will publish an up-to-date list of who currently owns the quota, essentially the right to fish, in the UK? I accept that this comes under the headline, "Stuff Labour should have done when we were in government." That does not let the current government off the hook, so to speak. The whole country has the right to know how much quota is owned and exploited by working fishermen and how much, if any, is owned by non-fishing interests. Finally, Mr Brady, another area of debate that needs to be addressed is that of subsidies and the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. The EMFF is a funding instrument intended to support the objectives of the reformed CFP from 2014 to 2020. In the past, several Member States have benefited from EU financial assistance for the fishing sector without properly implementing and enforcing the rules of the CFP. For example, a number of Member States did not fulfil their reporting obligations under the Data Collection Framework Regulation, yet continue to benefit from funding. Surely it is unacceptable that operators who engage in serious infringements can continue to benefit from EU financial assistance. Does the Minister believe that access to EU funding under the EMFF should be conditional upon compliance and delivery of the reformed CFP and other EU marine legislation. I ask this because the general approach outlined by the Council of Fisheries Ministers on which he sits overruled the EU Commission's proposals to introduce clear language in Article 12 to ensure that EU financial assistance is not admissible for operators who do not comply with the rules. If the Minister agrees with my previous question, then what steps is he taking to redress this change? Surely the Minister does not believe that funding should still be available to operators who flout the CFP's basic rules. If so, then why did he sign off on it? That said, I share a lot of common ground with the Minister of the vast range of issues we've heard from today. Fishing is not a party political football, and I don't think anyone in the House, most people in the House, don't intend to treat it so. I'm sure that if the Minister cannot answer all the questions that I and other honourable members have raised today, he'll write to us with full answers.